everyone. This is Tanielle Bruce Smith again with the Prioritize the Pause show. And I have a powerhouse with me today, Dr. Tamara Beckford. She is so incredible. She is one of our leaders in EntreMD, one of the groups that I'm a part of. But before I just start going and going about her, I want to let Dr. Beckford take some time to fully introduce herself because we're going to have a great conversation about burnout in the workplace. Go ahead, Dr. Beckford.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your lovely platform. I'm Dr. Tamara Beckford. I'm an emergency medicine physician here in Houston, Texas. I'm the CEO of Your Caring Docs, where we help organizations to reduce employee stress and burnout and improve their productivity through self-care workshops. I am a person who has been through burnout. I got close to it during the pandemic, and then I recognize that there were some things that I incorporated in myself that helped to reduce it. And as with everything, once you learn something, you want to kind of help others. So that's where some of my passion lies. And I can't wait to really let off some of this passion with you and your audience here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction. And normally people do this at the end, but I just want to make sure that for everyone, in case they don't make it to the end of the talk, can you tell us about some of the upcoming events that you have?
Absolutely. So I have a masterclass that is coming up on the 23rd of February. It's going to be at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. That's 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard for those of you on the East Coast, like Dr. Tanielle. And
Yes.
it's all about burnout and productivity. So I call it Your Team is on the Edge. So this is all about our team. You're working as a leader. You find out that your team is really just on the fringe and the edge. And so I'll be providing 7 ways to help to boost productivity and to reduce burnout in your team when you find them on the edge. So I'm really excited about that. I'd love for you guys to join. It's very simple to register. It's at my website, yourcaringdocs.com/masterclass. So that's yourcaringdocs.com/masterclass.
Thank you so much for sharing. I definitely just wanted to make sure that everyone knew about your upcoming masterclass because all the information that you give is so needed. We think that it's just in healthcare that we're all burned out, but it's in every sector. A lot of my family's in education and they're very burned out. Everyone that I talk to has some kind of burnout story. So the fact that you are creating this space and providing this education and providing the services for people is so wonderful. And it's going to help people in ways they didn't even know they needed help in.
Oh, I'm glad that you're saying that because whenever anyone hears about burnout, the first thing they think about is, oh, yes, those are in the medical profession. But we don't want to negate those who are doing other professions. Like you're right. So many people are dealing with burnout. As you mentioned, in education, they said around like 54% of K through 12 teachers are burnt out. So my kids are in K through 12. So actually, mine was in first grade. But I'm just saying, his first grade teacher could be burnt out. And I can see it. I see the amount of work that these teachers are doing. I see the amount of work, they're having time to do administrative work. And then by the time I blink, they're gone through another 9 weeks. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and you're having to deal with a lot of minds. And really the responsibility of really curating these minds and cultivating them so that they could go out into the world and be productive citizens. Teachers are a big part of that. We have in the IT industry, almost 77% of those who are working in IT are burnt out. So yes, you're calling IT and you're stressed and they're like, plug and unplug your computer. There's certain little simple things. They're probably getting multiple calls. If we think about what the pandemic has done to the software and the IT industry, we're all now completely and almost totally dependent on information technology. Zoom calls galore. That's what we're doing right now. So many ways and everyone wants things done immediately. So we can understand the stress that's brought upon those who are in information technology, those engineering, legal services. There are just so many people all throughout the different sectors that are dealing with burnout. And so for me, it would behoove me to not try to help others, especially if within our industry, we've come up with some ways or some techniques. I mean, rest assured, medicine, we still need to go a little bit further, a whole
Yes.
lot further. But it's something that's talked about in medicine. And so the other industries, it's important for them to recognize and for us to recognize in them that the same thing's going on. You know, it might look a little bit different, but it's the same thing, which is burnout.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that information. I did not even think about it from the IT perspective, but even for me, like, of course, I've used computers, I've used Zoom, things like that. But now I have an office with a mic, with all these different things. And when I need support, who am I going to call? The IT people.
Person.
And they have expanded and have to do so much more interaction with people than they probably did pre-COVID or pre-pandemic. So that definitely can be stressful. Definitely be, and that plug unplug has saved me a lot.
I'm one of those too that were like, it's just not working. Well, did you consider just unplug it? And you know what? You're right. I did not consider unplug it, but now I will.
So let's take it back a little bit. Do you mind defining burnout for us?
Absolutely. So burnout is really when you're finding it's relegated to the workplace. That's number one. A lot of times that, we look at burnout and, we're thinking it in our life overall. No, that's usually getting to the point when you're probably heading towards depression, when it starts to overtake your life. But burnout is when you're finding reduced productivity, you're finding reduced energy, the quality of your work starts to become reduced, and you don't want to go to work, right? So all the negative emotions and the visceral reactions starts to happen when you think about your job. So what we call visceral, I'm using all these big medical terms. So visceral reaction really is when you're feeling nauseous, you want to vomit, your head hurts, your stomach hurts. You go through all of these negative like reactions, such as your body's aching, but it's just towards that particular situation. So that's the visceral reaction that you're having. You're nauseous, you vomit, and you're having diarrhea. When is this happening? Only when I have to go to work. I'm sitting in the parking lot and I'm crying for 30 minutes before I enter into the building. I'm crying because I don't want to go in there, but I feel like I have to. I have no choice but to do this. I don't want to interact with the people and I don't feel comfortable. I'm no longer feeling that this is a place where I can be at my best. Those are the reactions to burnout. Burnout really occurs, a lot of time it's a little bit slow, ongoing process. And once you get into it, a lot of times you don't realize that you're burnt out until you got out of burnout. Or unless it's hit you at a point where you're just having a huge reaction to it. Case in point, like I look at some of my burnout history, and it wasn't until like 2020 that I look back and I'm like, oh, in 2015, I might have been burned out. I just changed my situation. I'm like, oh, I don't feel comfortable here anymore. Oh, wow. No, if they're doing that to that person, what are they going to do to me? Oh, I no longer want to be in this. I love my colleagues, but I don't like the way I feel when I go to this particular place anymore. So now I want to change. How is it that I can make myself feel better? Let me change my situation. And then it was like a miracle. It's like if you I like it to a movie, that's when the sun came out and the birds started singing. But I didn't realize how dark the clouds were until I moved away from that situation. So those are some issues that you'll have when you'll notice emotionally what's going on with burnouts. I've seen it in others. I've seen it, the pandemic version of it, and I've seen myself react the complete opposite. I've seen myself thriving during the pandemic, while I've seen a lot of my colleagues who are suffering during
Yes.
it. And that's when I realized that, wow, there must be something that I'm doing differently than my colleagues that's having me thrive. And if this is something that I can find and put together and help others, why not? And that's really where this all comes and stems from.
I love that answer because as you were speaking, I was thinking back to my own burnout journey and I
Mm-hmm.
had all the visceral body responses that you talked about. But
Uh-huh.
then it made me think about me and massage. So I love a good massage. But
Mm-hmm.
at one point when I was working full time, if I did not get a massage every 2 weeks, my body was hurting. Like I could literally
Ah,
feel the hurt in my body.
the
And honestly, a
tension.
lot of it was the tension. And
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh no, this is how I relax. No, I am tense, tense to
It
the
is
max.
tense.
And we make
Absolutely.
up these stories like, oh, well, it's this, it's that. No, like there's these major things that's going on.
Absolutely.
And it takes taking a moment to pause and
Mm-hmm.
really start to reflect on,
Yes.
wow, this nausea only happens when I'm at work. For me, it was chest pain. Like I was having chest
Yes.
pain to the point where I'm like, do I need to get an EKG? And I
Mm.
would, but the thing is, I would go work out right after work and feel
It feel
great.
great.
I knew it wasn't a cardiac, like a real like heart specific issue. It was something else. Because I'm like, I just ran like as fast as I could, and the chest pain went away. What's that?
That, and you're like, that's the opposite of what I learned in medical school about cardiac related things. And that's the other thing, right? It at the time when we did our training, I don't think that they really talked about burnout. It wasn't the stress response. Of course, we talk a little bit about it, but not in that situation. It's really a stress response overall.
Mhm.
Burnout is really a stress response to your job, and it's usually a work related stress response. So it for those who are watching, if you're thinking about it and you start to notice certain reactions or certain patterns in your life, take like Dr. Daniel says, just take a pause and reflect and just document it, and then you'll start to notice, wow, am I feeling this way in certain situations, or am I feeling this way all the time? If you're
Mhm.
feeling that way all the time, the likelihood that it's burnout, really, especially work related burnout, it's very low. It's probably something else, and it could be something else even bigger. But it really behooves you to really take the time to reflect within yourself as to what's going on with me at this point in time, and how, because that's the only way you're going to be able to fix it is, first you need to figure out what it is, and then you go into corrective portion afterwards.
Absolutely. So, okay, you have an employee.
Mm-hmm.
They see they have these signs of burnout just related to work. They're having all the body responses. They don't want to go to work. They're not motivated.
Mm-hmm.
How do they go about having that discussion with their employer, with their boss?
Absolutely. I think that this is, I get asked this question. I think it's a very poignant question because, of course, it is a very challenging one, because the dynamic in the relationship is it's so hard,
Mhm.
because you already feel you're a subordinate. And how do you go to your superior and let them know that you're not feeling at your best, especially without feeling that you're going to get retaliated against? So I think that number one, it requires, one to really just sit, reflect, and to take notes of what's going on in their life, and then to use the resources that are available. So at most jobs, they'll have your paid time off, or they'll have resources such as mental health days, or those days. Take a stock, find out what is it that's available at your particular job, and then look into it, and then look into ways that you can try to implement it. Now, I'm not saying to just start doing it and blindside your boss, but you're looking and you figure out what are ways that you can implement that. Then you'll bring that to them. This is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on. This is how it's affecting my productivity. As a result, these are the plans that I have. in order to improve myself so that I can improve my productivity, which is I'm probably going to need to have this particular time off, but you already have your set information, how you can do this and how you can bring this about. Now, this would be best done before you're really deep into the throngs of burnout. Because when you're really deep into it, you don't see a way out. And that's unfortunate. Like you really do, you just feel like there's no way out of this. Like I'm just deep in it. There's no reaction or there are no solutions at this point. But there's always a solution, but you'll just not feel that way. So when you start to get into that point, it's best to try to come up with these steps so that you can try to, as best as possible, avoid getting deeper into that response. Now, that's one way for the employee to the employer. Now, the biggest thing I feel, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, is that the leadership team should be able to notice this in their team and try to prevent it by providing the tools so that your team is not getting to the point that they're burnt out and then they're afraid to come to you to talk to you about it. And that's where I feel like a lot of this that's where my work lies and that's where my passion lies, because we know from the dynamic of superior to subordinate, your subordinate is least likely to come to you, but you should provide resources that they want to try to avoid them getting to that point, or two, to provide tools to help to reduce the chance of them getting to the point of burnout.
Ooh, that is so good. I love everything that you just said. And you are segueing right into where I wanted to go. So, if you are an employer, so you are the boss of the company, the CEO, whatever, a leader in an organization, and you're seeing these signs that your employees are, they're just not working the same way, their productivity is not there, they're taking a lot more time off than they normally are, their affect is just different. How do you go about having that conversation and presenting the resources? Because maybe the employee does not know about all the different resources. So, how does an organization go about doing that?
Absolutely. Great question. So I usually say it starts from the top down, right? How are you handling stress as a leader? And the way you're handling stress, your team is watching you. So if you're handling stress by throwing things, by temper tantrum, which is, let's just be real, if you're throwing things across the table and you're banging and cursing, that's just an adult form of a 2-year-old temper tantrum, right? So how are you handling the stress? That's number one. So have you invested in ways to handle the stress within yourself? And number two, have you invested in ways to handle the stress within your team? There are resources available. There are, workshops, which is what I do. I help to provide workshops to help your team to reduce stress and burnout. Have you looked into providing one of these workshops for your team? Now, you might not have invested within yourself, but you can also attend these workshops and see how and what are some of the tools that they're providing for this stress reduction in the team. Now, it's important for you to do this when you're seeing the stress happen and the productivity is starting to waver, because a lot of the productivity starts going down because the team is getting to the point where they're just like, the creative juices are gone. They're just hanging on by a thread and they're doing the mundane task of just going to work, trying to do the best that they can with whatever brain cells left, and then leaving. You're burnt out, you're getting there. But once you can bring back that vitality, that amazing culture, that the creative juices, once you help them to reduce the stress, just simple techniques, simple but powerful techniques, things that you even talk about, like Dr. Brew, like you're talking about mindfulness, you're talking about breathing techniques, about yoga, about teaching about morning routines or wake up routines, as I call that, teaching them about ways of gratitude practice, acknowledging positive things that's going on in the environment, the work environment, ways, and just doing 2 touch points. How are you doing today? More than likely they're going to say, yeah, I'm okay. But then go a little bit deeper, find out a little bit more about them, find out what's going on in the lives of the employee. Now, as a CEO, you're probably thinking, well, I can't do that. Well, that's, okay. That's why you have the managers and you have all these other people that can do these touch points for you so that you can get everyone on the same accord. If your employees feel that they're valued and that they are cared for, then they're all on the same accord when they'll go with the value of the organization too. If they feel like they're just a cog in the wheel, that's the productivity that you're going to get. Cog in the wheel productivity.
Absolutely. This could be a TED Talk. Just the information you gave right there could change people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree with what you're saying. Just those simple, the mindfulness, the breathing, the yoga, having a morning routine to set your day, gratitude practice, all of those can really shift how the person themselves is just going through their day. But then also knowing that you're in an environment there where there's someone who cares for you,
Absolutely.
that you are not just a number, not
Mm-hmm.
just someone who's easily replaceable. Oh, I'll just put another ad out on
Yes.
Indeed when that person goes away. No, it's showing that you care by
And they
taking it a
value.
step deeper, not just, hey, how you doing? Okay, who cares? Bye. No, hey, how you doing? How's your kid? I know such and such
Yes.
has like just that little one, even one layer deeper makes
Mm-hmm.
a difference. It makes a difference because one, that person had to remember that one specific fact about you when they
Absolutely.
didn't have to. And that,
Absolutely.
for me, I know that makes a huge difference when someone can recall something that I said to them however long ago, and now we can have a
Mm-hmm.
conversation about that. I'm like, okay, I'm taking this
Yes.
to my brain.
Yes, exactly. And you know that it shows so much, right? And I feel that a lot of our colleagues and we feel like a lot of our employees and people who are around us have been through so much, but they're still coming to work and they're giving. They're
Mm-hmm.
giving to the job. So why not find out about it? And I even thought about this. If you even remember, like, during the time when we were really in the throes of the pandemic, there's so many people who lost loved ones. How are
Yes.
you handling that? There's so many people who are dealing with a lot of medical issues. Now, rest assured, no, you're not going to go into their medical problems, but you can just say, hey, how's that going? How are you feeling better? Is there anything that we can do to support you?
Mm.
How about
Yes.
that? You know? So there're just so many factors. I was talking to someone earlier today and I asked this question because I felt like it was just so important. And this is a question that for those of you who are in HR and for those of you who are there in leadership, that I think that this is just so important for us to really pay attention to. So there's a young lady who had to leave because of a medical leave, a mental medical leave, right? So she returned back to work and I asked her, what was it that you felt that they could have done to help the transition back? Now, here is the thing that she said. She said her job missed the mark. And the worst thing about it is that the job was in the psychiatric department of a facility. Why? Because they assumed what she needed versus asking her what
Yeah.
she needed for support. So they assume that she took the time off, so she doesn't need A, B, and C. We should take this off of her plate. When she said that work that they took off her plate is what she needed in order to bring herself back to how she felt when she was at her best and felt when she felt like she was valid to the organization. The organization, in an attempt to help without asking her specifically how they can help her, ended up making her feel less valid within the
Mm.
organization. So that's just the importance of just really just speaking. She said that they didn't want to talk to her one-on-one anymore. She just felt like there was such a huge disconnect afterward. Now, all of this can be reduced, maybe not completely avoided, but just by doing the simple task of just asking, how can we support you?
Yes. That is so important. Oh, that is so important. For one, it is we assume so much.
Yes.
I've had this conversation with so many people in my family, everyone. Oh, we assume that everything's fine. No, no, no,
No,
no, no. Don't assume anything. Just ask the question. Ask the
absolutely.
question. Ask
Mm-hmm.
how I want to be supported, or ask how
Mm-hmm.
that person wants to be supported. It is so important. And going
Mm-hmm.
back to something that you said earlier when it comes to organizations having different resources available, if an organization has resources available for people who are burned out or having early stages of burnout, and then their employer uses those resources, then they connect the use of these wonderful resources and tools to that company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just another reason why having the resources, letting the employees know about the resources, promoting them is so important because they're not just now, a lot of people are going to outside people, come to outside coaches and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
When if those things were already in the workplace, then that would make it an easier transition and feeling like, oh, my workplace is supporting me and me
Yes.
trying to get back to my best.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it shows that in the statistics that when people feel supported by their workplace, they're more likely to give it high ratings, the productivity is higher, and they're less likely to want to leave,
Mhm.
you know. And it's not all going to be about the finances. It's not all about like, well, I'm not getting paid as much. They feel more vested within the organization because the organization is vested within them. So,
Yes. And one
yes.
thing I've seen with burnout, it becomes the person versus the organization. But when the
Mm,
organization is providing the resources, then that dynamic isn't as severe, isn't as
mhm,
large,
mhm.
because it can't be the person versus the organization if how the person recovers or is being treated is through some of the resources of the organization. And the organization recognizes
And
that something is going
supports.
on and they are actively taking steps to support that person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Then it turns into we working together versus me against you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Okay, this has been an incredible talk. So much great information. Dr. Beckford, if there was just one last statement that you could leave with our audience, what would that be?
To do not be afraid to look for resources to help you. If you find that you're feeling down, if you find that you're feeling any of the emotional responses that we talked about during this particular interview, do not hesitate to look out for resources. As Dr. Taniel and I said, you know, there's so many of us out here who are working very hard in order to reduce the burnout, to reduce the stress for people within, for me, within organizations and for individuals out there. So we are out there. So do not be afraid to look for us.
Oh, Dr. Beckford, thank you so much for being here. I want to make sure that all of my followers and all my listeners are able to connect with you. Could you
Mhm.
please one more time tell us all the different ways that they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So I'm available on LinkedIn. I do have a lot of information out there, and you can find me at Tamara Beckford, MD. That's Tamara. Beckford, B as in boy, ECKFORD, MD on LinkedIn. And you can find a lot of my resources on yourcaringdocs.com. That's my website. That's URCARINGDOCS.com. I do have an upcoming masterclass, and that will be available on the website. You can register at yourcaringdocs.com/masterclass. On the other social media, I am on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. So you can find me at Your Caring Docs on those platforms, or look my name up, Tamara Beckford.
Thank you so much, Dr. Beckford, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.